President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honour to address you here today in my capacity as Chair of the Committee on World Food Security. As you all know, this is an essential event in the United Nations calendar. Food security is a primary issue for the survival of human beings. That's why it was at the heart of our Sustainable Development Agenda in 2015. We believe that we can end global hunger by 2030. Now, this may seem like a staggering objective, perhaps an unachievable one. But in fact, thanks to investment in agriculture and economic infrastructure, the number of people who are undernourished in the world actually halved between the years 2000 and 2015. So surely, if we can have this kind of success in just 15 years, we could do so again. Unfortunately, in 2016, the world got hungrier. Almost 40 million more people were without sufficient food. And that's because we are living in an increasingly insecure world. We are beginning to witness the effects of climate change, drought and flooding. These events can devastate harvests, meaning people have to go without food. And even after the event, they can limit the amount of arable land that is available for farmers to set up again. And the events themselves, these disasters, can cause population displacement, meaning people have to move further afield, set up anew, or even find themselves packed in camps without the resources or space to continue their agricultural activities. Conflict, too, has increased, meaning that more people than ever are suffering from displacement. But now, there is also a new threat, a threat that is unprecedented, unexpected, and that is the coronavirus. My colleague David Beasley of the World Food Programme has already warned that we could be facing a famine of biblical proportions in the next few months. The lockdowns, very justifiably introduced in many countries, have meant that farmers cannot necessarily get to work. They have also limited the amount of exports and imports that can be carried out through our transport networks. And the loss of income due to the virus may well mean that people struggle to get back on their feet again, even when the virus is over. This has been added to what was already going to be a very difficult year. This year, locust swarms have been particularly devastating in parts of Africa and Asia, which has simply heightened the levels of insecurity some of the most deprived parts of the world are facing. So, how can we hope to feed our populations in the short term? Never mind feed 9 billion people by 2050. To do so, we need a fundamental rethink of our food system. In the past, we have been focusing on innovation in production, with the aim of modifying crops to maximize their yield. This has meant that we have been able to develop drought-tolerant rice, for example, or crops that can produce more food for the amount of energy that goes into them. Another field of innovation has been technology. Data has enabled apps to be developed that can share information between farmers. To give an example, in Egypt, Sudan and Ethiopia, real-time weather data is sent out to vegetable farmers, which helps them to predict the levels of irrigation needed for their crops, and to mitigate the impact of extreme weather events. Another example comes from Mongolia, where rural herders are provided with information about disease outbreaks. This can help them avoid suffering devastating losses if the disease comes to their herd. Another example of the usefulness of technology in agriculture has been the impact of mobile money, particularly in countries where there is limited access to banking. Mobile money allows people to send money to each other or to companies without a bank account. This means that people who have left their rural communities to work in cities can easily send remittances back to farming communities where they came from. It ensures that the money continues circulating through the economy and helps sustain agriculture. Mobile money also helps farmers to buy seeds and fertiliser, the agricultural inputs that they need to continue and maximise their profits. And finally, it simply helps to reduce transaction costs between consumers and producers. All of these areas of innovation have been significant and have had a tremendous impact. As I said, food, the levels of people being undernourished halved in just 15 years from the year 2000. But now we are facing an even greater threat, and we need a fundamentally new approach. Innovation is more than apps, drones, modified seeds, and farm machines. We need to tackle the root causes of hunger and malnutrition. To do this, we need to change the way that we produce, process, distribute, and consume food. We need to organise ourselves differently. And we must make family farmers the protagonists of this strategy. Food security is reliant on innovation among small-scale producers, such as family farmers. This means that global technology must be tailored to local conditions. Too often we have seen a one-size-fits-all approach, which cannot be applied well to local conditions. And in particular, we have seen women being ignored in the development of strategies. There is limited available data on gender, for example, and women have often not been included in the decision-making process. But the reality is that women in developing countries produce 60 to 80% of the food available. Despite this, they have limited access to resources. What we need is to redress the structural imbalance that exists in this case, and we need to ensure that women have access to everything they need to be able to become innovative small farmers. Firstly, women need access to land. Currently, they own less than 2% of the land around the world. Land reform programs tend to favour men as heads of household, so there is a need to redress this. Secondly, credit. Because women tend not to own property, they struggle to access loans, as they cannot provide collateral for the loan. This means that reforming the land structures and ensuring that women have access to land, as well as ensuring that there are lending institutions focusing their activities on women, could make a significant difference. Thirdly, women need access to agricultural inputs such as improved seeds and fertilisers. Too often, development programs have failed to reach out to women in the community, and often they are not members of cooperatives, which means that they are not in the front line for gaining access to innovative technologies and seeds. Finally, women need education and training. Only 5% of the educational support provided by development programs goes to women, and often it focuses on cash crops, which tend to be farmed by men, rather than subsistence crops, which tend to be farmed by women. All of this will ensure that our strategy is better tailored to the reality of who is producing food on the ground. Currently, 80% of African agricultural production is carried out by smallholders, but they have extremely low levels of productivity due to a lack of funding. This coronavirus crisis is accelerating Africa's dependence on food imports. It's not something we can change overnight. To deal with the crisis, we must keep relying on having open supply chains and gaining funding from countries to support developing ones. But in the long term, empowering small-scale farmers, in particular women, to innovate is the only way forward. Thank you.